Anyway, MJ and Ned. Okay, yeah, this was so silly too, where Ned just learns how to open portals just out of nowhere, with Doctor Strange's ring. He's like doing like this, trying to say something, and like the portal like opens up like almost, and then he like learns how to like open up the portals. And I was like, this is so silly because it's just like them having to fast forward to it's a plot hole because like we're taught in the Doctor Strange movie that learning how to be a wizard and all that takes like years. And like Doctor Strange being able to pick up on that stuff is very rare. And even he had a very big learning curve in like, well, literally a learning curve in building the big circles. But yeah, it's like, he learned how to be a wizard and being in the, wizard cult or whatever it is, the order of sorcerers or whatever, those guys, all they do all day is meditate and train and learn how to, and spend their entire lives learning how to do this magic. And then, friggin' what's his name? Ned learns how to do it on accident. Come on, man. It's just ridiculous. Thought it was silly. But they use the ring, and then this ultimately is the plot device that is used to summon Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, who we see in the most like weird reveal ever. I wish they would have had a better reveal for these two, for Andrew Garfield and who will then see Tobey Maguire, who comes second. Which I thought it was smart to have Garfield be the first reveal, because obviously he's kind of like his movies were the worst of the three. He didn't even get a third movie, so he's definitely has the worst Spider-Man movies of the three Spider-Mans we've gotten in this century. But so it was smart to kind of have him come out, but people still wanted to see him in this role, including me. I liked him as Spider-Man. I think he was probably one of the most convincing like Peter Parkers in terms of like capturing the essence of the character of Peter Parker, because like Peter is kind of awkward and like quirky like Garfield was in that role. So I thought he probably was the most authentic Peter Parker. But in terms of like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, Tobey is that guy. Tobey is that guy, and he shows up, man, and it's so awesome. I was so happy to see him. I mean, I love, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. To this day, I still think they're fantastic films, and there's definitely, well, the first two. Third one, it's aged okay, but I still think it's bad. I still think it's a bad film. I know people have a softer heart on it, especially nowadays, and I think of it more as like a funny like black sheep comedy of the third of the trilogy. It's like kind of like the weird cousin. But I don't like the film to this day, but I love Tobey as this character, and it was so cool to see him back in this role, and I'm so glad he did it. And we all knew that Tobey and Garfield were going to do this, and I'm so happy both of them did it, because it was such a cool moment. And now they can go on with their lives without having to be asked about this anymore, which would be good for both of their sanity, I'm sure. Especially Garfield. He was getting asked about it every 5 minutes. I mean, literally every interview he did with the press, he was getting asked about doing this film. And he was just like, I don't know anything about it. Don't ask me about it. I don't know. He did a good job of hiding it, because frankly, I would have just been like, at one point, I was just been like, yes, I'm going to be in the movie. Like he just revealed it. But they did a good job of keeping it a secret, and it's going to pay dividends, because people are probably going crazy in the theater. My theater went pretty nuts. Yeah, it was a good moment. Anyway, yeah, we have, so we get their reveal, and it was cool. You get to see them, interact, and they had some good comedy with the cleaning the spider webs and all that. That was okay. Then we got Ned and MJ. They find Peter, who's mourning over Aunt May, and then we get this really interesting scene, which I actually really liked. And it was kind of the bonding moment between the three Spider-Mans, where they all kind of come together and reconcile with the fact that, Aunt May's dead. And I like how, like, Aunt May died. But, the thing is, I kind of mentioned how Aunt May kind of dies, like, senselessly. It actually really works well within this story. And I actually like that about her death, is that she dies so senselessly, because that's how Uncle Ben died, in the other, Spider-Man films. And like when they talk about it in this scene, it's really, really well done and really touching, because they kind of use the other two films to push up this film and push up this Spider-Man. and make it like, this is his moment to really be his own person, because he learned great power. With great power comes great responsibility, and that whole big saying, and that was his moment. And this that's why I think this is an origin trilogy more so than like an origin, than like Homecoming being an origin film. And that's why this wasn't, Spider-Man didn't necessarily get an origin film. He got an origin trilogy in this case, and that's what this was. And this was kind of the culmination of that, where he's, officially, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the film. But yes, I like this. It's kind of, serves purposes as giving good characterization to Peter. It's a great scene, good acting from Tom Holland, but also as a good connective tissue between the three universes and the three Spider-Mans. So that was really a cool moment. But then they plan basically to fight the villains, where I love how all three of the Peters like know exactly how to beat the villains, know exactly the cures that they need to get. Like Toby's like, oh, let me just go whip up the antidote I need to defeat Green Goblin and Sandman and all that. It's just like, okay, like, again, just kind of contrived. Another thing that really kind of pissed me off in this movie was that, just like small stuff like that. It's just like, come on, like the cures and like that whole concept, I think is kind of ridiculous and plot devicey to say the least. Just to kind of make up for the fact that they had to take so much time to do fan service and other stuff, that they just kind of threw this in there, like, oh yep, we're just gonna whip up all the cures and figure it all out. Don't worry about it. But anyway, they basically meet at the Statue of Liberty. Strange ends up returning. The three Spider-Mans, it was awesome to see them fight, and you get the big money shot of all three of them, together. Then you get Octavius. He ends up, joining them and helping defeat Electro. Rips his arc reactor out, which is what he stole from Happy's place. He stole the arc reactor and used it to charge him up. But yeah, they basically, Sandman gets beat. Connors, he gets turned back into a man from a lizard. And then, and then, you get the cool little moment between Andrew Garfield and Jamie Foxx, which was funny because it's just like those movies were so blah, but at least they gave him some closure. But also I love the moment with MJ where Andrew Garfield saves MJ, and it kind of harkens back to the Gwen Stacy moment where he where she died, and again that ties into the last scene where they were talking about how they had loved ones die too, and that's kind of a part of being Spider-Man, which was an interesting thing. And it's cool how they all kind of got their closure. Anyway, so then Strange comes back. He starts, seeing that the universe is breaking, the fabric of it starts cracking. You start seeing the villains start to come from other dimensions. Peter is pissed off and he's fighting against the Green Goblin. And then he gets angry and almost kills him. He like punches him like 90 times in the face and then almost stabs him with the Green Goblin glider. But then Toby stops him, and like he has this great stare down with Tom Holland Spider-Man. It's like this cool moment where it's like this the older grown statesman Spider-Man like teaching a lesson to the younger Spider-Man, like, don't do this, don't make a mistake, don't be vengeful, and it's this cool like moment of closure, especially since Osborn and Peter had so much bad blood. To see so much maturity from that character 20 years later is so cool. It was such a cool moment, and such great acting without any dialogue. Just smart physical acting from a guy that really wanted to give some proper closure to this character that we all hadn't seen for 20 years.